Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. 2 days after the deadly clash that killed at least 20 Indian soldiers in Ladakh's Galwan Valley, the border area continues to remain tense. Now, last evening, China released 10 Indian Army personnel, including 4 officers who had been captured during the violent face-off on Monday night. The Indian Army says no Indian soldier is missing in action. Both countries continue to hold talks through their military leaders and at diplomatic levels. Meanwhile, India is beefing up its border preparedness. Sources tell us that the Indian Air Force chief has visited Leh to review Air Force operations in the region. Fighter aircraft also learned to have been moved to forward bases as part of the preparedness exercise. Prime Minister Modi currently in a meeting with leaders from over 15 political parties to discuss the border conflict with China. Let's first go across to my colleague Parikshit Luthra for the latest. Parikshit, so those soldiers released yesterday by China, what is the government's response?
Well, we still have very little information about the circumstances that led to the attack by Chinese forces on the 15th night. Why were those soldiers captured by the Chinese side? And what were the terms of the negotiation which ended up with the release of those soldiers last evening around 4 p.m. The Army or the Ministry of External Affairs is not commenting on reports of Indian soldiers being detained and released, but they only say that all soldiers are accounted for. There is nobody missing in action. We've also been told that 76 of our soldiers were injured in that clash on 15th and 16th. They're all in hospital. None of them are critical. They'll recover and get back to work in a week or two. We're looking at high-level talks still taking place. We believe that talks at the level of joint secretaries, bureaucrats, diplomats from both sides will take place over the next few weeks. The air chief today visited Ladakh to review operational preparedness as well. We saw fighter planes moving to forward areas. China, on its side, continues to deny that it had any role to do with this. It is calling India the aggressor in this, saying that Indian forces provoked the Chinese and they did not seize any soldiers from the Indian side. Back to you.
All right, Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Modi is in that meeting with leaders of over 15 political parties on the situation in China. Pallavi Ghosh joins us now. Pallavi, that meeting continues. We've, of course, seen comments coming in, statements from Congress Party President Sonia Gandhi, NCP leader Sharad Pawar, as well as Mamata Banerjee. Sonia Gandhi asking pointed questions on whether there was an intelligence failure, on when the transgression took place by the Chinese army, in which areas it took place. Sharad Pawar saying that diplomatic options must be considered. The TMC, Mamata Banerjee, saying that they stand in solidarity with the government and also suggesting that China not be allowed to enter telecom, railway and aviation. Pallavi, what are you picking up on what has gone down in that meeting?
Well, I think the common thread which really comes out from that meeting, Shireen, is the fact that they have almost every political party has expressed their solidarity with the government in its fight against China and also a strong rebuttal to China in this context. The words of, say, a Sharad Pawar or a Mamata Banerjee, all of that should actually help and embolden the government because there was no overt or very strong criticism coming in from them. They said that, there have to be diplomatic measures, channels of communication need to be opened up, and at the same time, a message needs to be conveyed to China that their behavior is completely unacceptable. Well, if there was anyone who came out very strongly, it was only Sonia Gandhi, but that's been the line of the Congress party, which even Rahul Gandhi has been taking really, Shireen, is asking those questions of the government. That was this an intelligence failure? Were you aware of it? Why were we not better prepared? Don't we have facilities of where we can actually spy upon our enemy and also know which way they are moving? Thereby insinuating that actually there was a failure on the part of the government. She, of course, rounded it off by saying that, at the end of the day, we're going to stand by the government, we're going to stand by the soldiers. But I think the BJP and the government will definitely use the comments of Sonia Gandhi to point out that while the Congress wants to do politics over this and issues of national interest and security, more or less every political party in the opposition spectrum has stood by the government, and that strengthens the hands of the governments, really.
Well, that is, of course, expected. But let's look at some of the other statements that are coming in. BJD's Pinaki Mishra at the all-party meeting saying Sarkar ko jawab dena padega. Strong action will have to be initiated against China. Whatever that action may be, the BJD will support the government. That is the view coming in there from the Biju Janata Dal. Nitish Kumar saying goods from China have flooded the Indian market. They're plastic heavy, aren't eco-friendly. They harm the environment. Electronic waste associated with them is high. Chinese products don't even last long. It is our duty to support the centre. This is all source-based information that we're getting at this point in time at what has transpired in that meeting. Those 15 political parties. Uddhav Thackeray, the Shiv Sena's chief, Uddhav Thackeray at the all-party meeting, telling Prime Minister Modi, we are all one. This is the feeling. We are with you, Prime Minister. We are with our forces and their families. Pallavi, do you expect some sort of communication from the government at the end of this party meeting?
Well, we were told that there's going to be a round-off which is going to come in, most probably an ending comment coming in from the Prime Minister, or in fact there would be some kind of a communication coming in from, say, the External Affairs Minister or the Defence Minister himself. And I'm sure they would want to convey what really happened at this meeting. I'm sure they would want to highlight the fact, completely overlooking the fact that there were certain tough questions asked of them. They would want to highlight the fact, really, Shireen, is that more or less every political party was actually standing firmly behind us. But if we expect that the government is going to give us details of what is going to be their strategy or road ahead, whether they're actually going to talk about economic sanctions against China or cutting down of the business interests of China, or whether they are actually going to talk about some kind of military or diplomatic action against China, I don't think matters of national security are going to be announced anytime so soon. There have been comments, of course, coming in from the Telecom Ministry, from the Railways Ministry, sporadically. Sentiments are very strong, and that kind of pressure also mounts on the government. Government, I think, would want to try and buy time at this point of time to try and point out that, the opposition parties are behind us, and therefore now we are going to do what we need to do or what we should do. What is it that they plan to do? Well, there's no parliament around the corner, so we'll have to wait and watch to see what really comes out from the government.
All right, Pallavi, we will, of course, come back to you as that meeting concludes. So far, we are getting statements that have come in from various political parties on the points that were made in that meeting with Prime Minister Modi, which is still underway. So what exactly are India's options? Well, diplomacy, if you ask former Foreign Secretary Nirupama Rao, but she's quick to add that this may be a good time for India to build on its partnerships with other nations like Australia, Vietnam and Japan. Retired Army General and former Army Chief V.K. Malik believes the recent events have eroded trust on both sides and that the Indian Army that's stationed at the border areas will have to dig in and remain alert. Former External Affairs Minister for State Shashi Tharoor, meanwhile, says these incidents prove that China is today in a very different mood than the one that it was when the LAC arrangement was first agreed upon. It's muscle flexing. That's the view. However, there is consensus that any changes to ties between India and China, especially when it comes to matters of trade and commerce, will have to be approached with deliberation and long-term strategic thinking. Take a look.
Well, I think a resolute response from the Prime Minister would be very helpful. What he said at the beginning of the meeting with the chief ministers has been widely quoted, but of course he said it in Hindi. I think he should speak to the world at some point, but only after first he has sorted out his own thinking within the government and given clear instructions to the army, not just the so-called free hand, but clear instructions as to what the strategic objectives of India are. Not just on the LAC, but on the overall relationship.
Is that we've not seen the kind of transparency from our side as it should be. One doesn't want to speculate on these aspects because it affects the families. There is no confirmation of this people have been taken into custody by the Chinese from our government side or even the army side. So there has been a poor communication from our side.
I think diplomacy is certainly the first option. Diplomacy is about finding, a solution. So let's give diplomacy a chance. Diplomacy is not a sign of weakness or pusillanimity. It's a very practical, pragmatic way to deal with this. It's what countries do all the time. War cannot be the first recourse, or conflict not, it should not be a knee-jerk reaction. I think we have to move with a lot of responsibility.
Well, those voices are voices who have understood the relationship between India and China for decades now, people who have been involved in shaping and crafting this relationship, saying that this is now a black swan event and protocols that were followed earlier may not necessarily work, but it is time to engage, time to talk diplomatically before we look at any military options. Let's take a look at the latest coronavirus numbers now. These released by the Health Ministry. As of 8 a.m. this morning, India's total COVID-19 tally stands at 3.8 lakh cases, with total active cases at 1.63 lakh, while total recoveries have crossed 2.04 lakh. During the 24-hour period, 13,500 fresh cases were reported. Of these, 2,864 cases are active, over 10,300 have recovered, and 336 people have died. The case fatality rate remains constant at 3.3%, while the recovery rate has jumped to 53.8%. Well, some of the other headlines that relate to the fight against COVID-19, Delhi's Health Minister Satinder Jain's condition has worsened despite being on oxygen support. Officials say he's being shifted from the Rajiv Gandhi Super Speciality Hospital to Max Saket and is likely to undergo plasma therapy. A panel set up by Home Minister Amit Shah recommends fixing the cost of COVID-19 isolation beds across all Delhi hospitals in the range of 8,000 and 10,000 rupees. The recommended price for a bed in ICU with a ventilator is between 15,000 and 18,000 rupees per day. These prices are almost 60% lower than the existing rates charged by private hospitals. After Delhi, Haryana caps COVID-19 testing fee by private labs at 2,400 rupees inclusive of GST. The new rates are effective immediately. Also says that labs must communicate the report to the patient after it's complete. The Supreme Court calls for uniformity in COVID testing rates across the country, asks the centre to coordinate with states and fix an upper limit for these tests. Chennai and 3 neighbouring districts go on an intense 12-day lockdown as the state races to contain the surge in COVID-19 cases. The government restricts most activities, barring essential services, but banks don't make the cut. Shops selling essential goods can only operate between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. Well, on to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. We learned from sources that only 0.03% of air passengers have tested positive for COVID from May 25th to June 15th. Anu Sharma joins us now with the details. Anu.
So we've learned from government sources that a total of 341 passengers, or 0.03% of passengers who traveled between May 25th and June 15th, were tested positive for COVID-19 by the state health authorities at the arrivals or at the destination city. And this number basically brings in huge relief for all the stakeholders, including airlines, airports, and passengers, as the percentage-wise, it is 0.03% or 341 out of 12.4 lakh passengers who had tested positive during this period. If you talk about airline-wise data, then for Indigo, the number is 186 passengers. And remember, Indigo is the largest airline in the country. It has 49% market share, so it must have flown around 6 lakh passengers during the period. And 186 out of 6 lakh will again come into about 0.03%. If we talk about Vistara, the number is 17. AirAsia India, the number is 22. For Air India and its regional arm, Alliance Air, the number is 36. And for TrueJet, the number is 5. If we talk about SpiceJet, the number is 60, but the airline has said that the number is incorrect and it is following all SOPs. But as far as our sources are concerned, we've been given to understand that 60 passengers from SpiceJet did test positive at the destination. So overall, a sort of a better picture coming in for the aviation space. And we've been given to understand that all the stakeholders are also busy putting in more measures to reduce the risk of transmission while traveling by air. For now, back to you.
All right, Anu, many thanks for joining us with that. It's time for us to head into a break, but up next, Reliance Industries becomes debt-free, says Mukesh Ambani as he enters the list of the world's top 10 richest people. That and more when we get back. Well, this is the big corporate story tonight. 9 weeks, 10 investors, 11 deals after raising 1.68 lakh crore rupees in just over 2 months through a combination of stake sales and a rights issue. Mukesh Ambani has declared that Reliance Industries has become free of debt. And this comes nearly a year ahead of the promised deadline to shareholders. In his statement, the Reliance chairman has said, and I quote, "Today I'm delighted and humbled to announce that we have fulfilled our promise to shareholders by making Reliance net debt free much before our original schedule of the 31st of March 2020. 51, exceeding the expectations of our shareholders and all other stakeholders again and yet again, is in the very DNA of Reliance, end of quote. Reliance Industries shares soared to new highs on the back of that announcement, the company's market capitalization surging over 11 lakh crore rupees. And the spate of deals in the Geo platforms has netted Reliance over $15 billion, the biggest pre-IPO single-round equity fundraise ever. Prashant Nair with the details.
So, this is massive, right? I mean, total money raised is $15.2 billion. And it's a continuous fundraise. I mean, you can call it a single-round fundraise. So what I basically have done is I've put together the 10 largest single-round pre-IPO equity fundraises ever. And Reliance Jio now tops the list. So at $15.2 billion that they've raised, this is number one. Actually by quite a distance, by almost about $1.2 billion or so. And this has all happened in a continuous exercise at almost the same valuation. So a single round, as I said once again. So look at the others on the list here. Ant Financial comes in at number 2. They raised about $14 billion. This is the fintech company of Alibaba, China-based, this happened in 2018. Next on the list is Didi, which is basically a ride-sharing company. Didi, by the way, is the one which gave Uber a great fight in China. Didi basically bought off Uber China, ended up owning a stake in Uber, and Uber also ended up owning a small stake in Didi. It's got other investors, of course, as well, like Apple, etc. Next, we come to Uber itself. Needs no introduction. $5.6 billion is what they raised. Then you come to Grab, which is basically a Singapore-based company. Again, app-based ride-sharing company. They raised about $4.8 billion. A plethora of international investors, like most of these firms. Ant Financial makes a reappearance with about a $4.5 billion. It makes a reappearance because these are separate rounds. They were done at different valuations. The first, Ant Financial, is also at number 2 with 14. It's also lower down the list because they did another round of about $4.5 billion.
All right, Prashant, many thanks for that. And thanks to the rally in Reliance shares today, the company's chairman Mukesh Ambani has entered the top 10 list of the richest people in the world. According to the Forbes real-time billionaires list, Mukesh Ambani's net worth now stands at $64.4 billion, one step above Google co-founder Larry Page, placed at the 10th spot. Jeff Bezos tops the list, followed by Bill Gates, Bernard Arnault of Louis Vuitton, and Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. Well, we will wrap things up here on this edition of India Business Hour. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment with the news. Stay with us. You're on CNBC-TV18.